I stared at my phone screen, watching the numbers blur as exhaustion pulled at my eyes. It was nearly midnight on a Wednesday, and I had just finished reviewing the quarterly projections for the pharmaceutical distribution company where I worked as a logistics coordinator. The empty coffee cup beside my laptop had long gone cold, but I barely noticed. This was my life now. Late nights, early mornings, and the constant hum of responsibility that never quite let me rest. My apartment in Phoenix reflected that reality. Clean but sparse, functional but impersonal. The furniture came from a discount warehouse, the art on the walls from a clearance sale at a home goods store. Everything screamed temporary, like I was still waiting for my real life to begin, even though I was 28 and had been supporting myself since college. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Family meeting this Saturday. Important. Be there at 2 p.m. I sighed and set the phone face down on the coffee table. Family meetings meant one of two things. Someone needed money, or someone wanted to complain about not having enough money. Given that my father, Marcus, had retired early from his sales job 3 years ago and spent most of his time golfing with his buddies, I suspected it was the former. Saturday arrived with the dry heat that made Phoenix summers brutal. I drove across town to the house where I grew up, a modest ranch-style home in a neighborhood in Glendale that had seen better days. My father had inherited it from his parents, so at least he owned it outright. Small mercies. I found him in the living room, sprawled on the leather recliner that had molded itself to his shape over the years. My stepmother, Karen, perched on the sofa beside him, scrolling through her phone with manicured nails that clicked against the screen. She had married my father 5 years ago, 6 years after my mother passed away from cancer. I tried not to resent her, but she made it difficult. There she is, my father said, not bothering to stand. Right on time. That's my Megan. Always responsible. The words should have felt like praise, but they landed like an obligation. What's going on? I asked, remaining standing near the doorway. My father exchanged a glance with Karen before clearing his throat. We wanted to talk to you about a family vacation, something special. We found this amazing resort in Cancun, all-inclusive, beautiful beaches, the works. Thought it would be nice for all of us to spend some quality time together. I felt my stomach tighten. That sounds nice, but I'm pretty swamped at work right now. We're in the middle of implementing a new inventory system, and you work too hard. Karen interrupted, her voice saccharine. Sweetie, you need to learn to relax. Live a little. You're almost 30. Almost 30? The words hung in the air like an accusation. When were you thinking? I asked carefully. 3 weeks from now, my father said. We already found the perfect dates. The resort has availability and the flights are reasonable. Well, reasonably expensive. But you know how it is. Something in his tone made my internal alarm start ringing. And how much are we talking about? My father waved his hand dismissively. That's the thing. We want to do this right. No cutting corners, no budget accommodations, a real vacation, the kind we deserve. Dad, how much? He shifted in his chair, suddenly very interested in the television remote. About $2,400 per person, so $7,200 total for the 3 of us. The number hit me like cold water. $7,200. It's a lot, I know, Karen said quickly. But when you break it down, it's really quite reasonable. 7 days, all meals included, premium drinks, spa access. I can't afford that right now, I said flatly. I'm still paying off my car, and I just had to replace my water heater last month. My father's expression hardened. Now, Megan, before you say no, hear us out. This is important. Family is important. We never get to spend time together anymore. Because I'm working, I said, hearing the defensive edge in my voice. Exactly, he said, as if I had just proven his point. You're always working. When was the last time you took a real vacation? When was the last time you did something just for fun? I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came. He was not entirely wrong. My last vacation had been a long weekend 2 years ago, and I had spent most of it sleeping and doing laundry. Here's what we're thinking, my father continued, leaning forward with the enthusiasm of someone about to close a deal. We each pay our own share. Equal split. No handouts. No one feeling like they're being taken advantage of. Everyone contributes. Everyone's paying their share. That's fair, right? Don't expect handouts this time, Karen added with a pointed smile. The phrase struck me as odd, as if I had been the one asking for handouts when the reality was exactly the opposite. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes with my father and Karen painting an increasingly elaborate picture of poolside relaxation and sunset dinners. I found myself weakening despite my better judgment. Maybe they were right. Maybe I did need a break. Maybe I was being too rigid, too focused on the practical concerns that consumed my daily life. Think about it, my father said as I prepared to leave. But don't think too long. We need to book by Monday to lock in these rates. I drove home in a daze, my mind churning through the numbers. $7,200 was more than I could comfortably spend, but it was not impossible. I had been saving for a rainy day, building up an emergency fund that currently sat at around $15,000. Taking out nearly half of it for a vacation seemed reckless. But the guilt was already working its way under my skin. When had I last spent real time with my father? When had I last done something purely for enjoyment rather than necessity? By Sunday evening, I had talked myself into it. I would go. I would pay my share. I would try to be less uptight, less focused on the future, more present in the moment. All the things that self-help articles and well-meaning friends always suggested. I texted my father, "Okay, I'm in. Let me know what you need from me." His response came immediately. "That's my girl. I'll handle the bookings. Just be ready to transfer your share when I ask." Monday morning arrived with a crisis at work, a shipping error that resulted in a delayed delivery of critical medications to a hospital network. I spent the entire day on the phone with carriers and suppliers, troubleshooting and problem-solving until my head pounded. By the time I got home at 7 p.m., I was exhausted. I had just changed into comfortable clothes when my phone chimed with a text from my father. "Booked everything. Need your share ASAP. Sending payment request now." Before I could respond, my banking app notification appeared. My father had sent a payment request through the app we both used for occasional transfers. The amount made my breath catch. $7,200. I stared at the number, my finger hovering over the decline button. This was real now. This was money leaving my account. Money I had worked overtime to save. Money that represented security and stability, but it was also my father, my family, the only family I had left, really. I closed my eyes and approved the payment. The money vanished from my account instantly, the balance dropping with brutal efficiency. I felt physically ill watching it happen, but I told myself it would be worth it. Quality time, relaxation, memories. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Another text from my father. "Thanks for covering us. Couldn't have done it without you." I read the message 3 times, each pass making my chest tighten further. Covering us. Not thanks for your share or excited to go together. Covering us. My hands started shaking as the realization crashed over me. I had not paid my third. I had paid for all of it. The entire trip, my father's portion, Karen's portion, and mine. $7,200 total, split 3 ways should have been $2,400 each. But my father had never intended to pay his share. Neither had Karen. They had set me up perfectly. The talk about equal splits, about no handouts, about everyone paying their own way. It had all been theater. They had known exactly what they were doing, had probably planned this conversation down to the last manipulative detail. I called my father immediately. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice cheerful and relaxed. "Hey, sweetheart, everything okay?" "You said we were each paying our share," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "We are," he replied, confusion coloring his tone. "You just paid yours." "Dad, I paid $7,200. That's the entire cost of the trip." A pause. "Then I guess the total was less than I thought." "Well, lucky us, right? More money for activities and excursions." The casual lie was somehow worse than the theft itself. "You told me to pay my share," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts. "You said $2,400 per person." "I said the trip was $2,400 per person," he corrected, his tone shifting to something patronizing. "You must have misunderstood. But hey, this works out great. You're always saying you want to do more for the family. Now you can treat us to this vacation. Think of it as a thank you for everything we've done for you over the years. Everything they had done for me." I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every time I had lent him money that was never repaid. Every birthday he had forgotten. Every promise he had broken. Instead, I heard myself say, "I want that money back." "What money?" "You authorized the payment, Megan. I didn't force you to do anything. You chose to be generous. Don't make this ugly now by asking for it back. That's not how family works. You lied to me." "I didn't lie about anything. You made assumptions. Not my fault if you didn't read carefully." His voice hardened. "Look, we're going on this trip. It's already booked. Non-refundable. So, you can either come with us and we'll have a nice time, or you can stay home and pout about it. Your choice." He hung up before I could respond. I sat frozen on my couch, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dead silence on the other end. My entire body felt numb, disconnected from reality. This could not be happening. My father could not have just stolen $7,000 from me with such casual cruelty. But he had, and somehow he had made it seem like I was the unreasonable one for being upset about it. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift as car headlights swept past my window. My mind kept replaying the conversation, searching for the moment where I could have prevented this. The warning sign I should have seen. They had all been there, glaring in retrospect. The emphasis on equal payment, the pointed comment about no handouts, the urgency to book immediately. They had played me perfectly, and I had walked right into it. By Tuesday morning, I felt hollowed out, operating on autopilot as I went through my work routine. My colleague Sarah noticed immediately when I arrived at the office. "You look terrible," she said bluntly, setting a fresh cup of coffee on my desk. What happened? Sarah was one of the few people at work I considered a real friend. She was 3 years older than me, with a directness I appreciated and a built-in radar for detecting problems. We had started at the company around the same time and had bonded over late nights and impossible deadlines. I told her everything, watching her expression shift from concern to disbelief to outright anger. "He stole from you," she said flatly when I finished. "I don't care how he framed it or what justifications he gave. He deliberately deceived you and took your money." "He's my father," I said weakly. "So what? That makes it worse, not better." She leaned against my desk, arms crossed. "What are you going to do about it?" "What can I do?" "The payment went through. The trip is booked. He made it clear he's not giving the money back." "Can you cancel the payment through your bank?" I had already checked. The transaction was authorized by me. The bank won't reverse it unless I file a fraud claim. And I don't know if I can do that against my own father. Why not? He committed fraud. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building behind my eyes. Because he's family. Because it would blow everything up. Because part of me keeps thinking maybe I did misunderstand somehow, even though I know I didn't. Sarah was quiet for a moment, studying me with an expression I could not quite read. You know what the worst part of this is? It's not even about the money, is it? It's about the fact that he knew exactly what he was doing. He looked at you, his daughter, and saw someone he could manipulate, someone he could use. Her words hit harder than I expected, and I felt my eyes sting with tears I refused to let fall. She was right. The money was devastating, yes, but the betrayal cut deeper. My father had calculated my guilt, my sense of obligation, my desperate desire to believe in the possibility of a real family connection, and he had weaponized all of it against me. I need to cancel that trip, I said suddenly, the decision crystallizing in my mind. I need to get that money back somehow. Can you cancel the bookings? I pulled up my laptop and started searching. My father had made the reservations, but if I could find out which resort, which airline, maybe I could contact them directly. It took me 20 minutes of digging through travel websites before I found it. A luxury resort in Cancun that matched the description my father had given. I called the resort first. A cheerful representative confirmed they had a reservation under my father's name for 3 guests, arriving in 3 weeks. When I asked about cancellation policies, the cheerfulness dimmed. I'm afraid that reservation is non-refundable, she said. It was booked as part of our premium package, which offers significant savings in exchange for commitment to the dates. What if there's an emergency? Medical issues? We would require documentation from a physician and would process a partial refund minus a processing fee, but the resort credit would be issued to the name on the reservation. My father's name, of course. I tried the airline next with similar results. The tickets were basic economy, which meant no refunds, no changes, no exceptions. My father had chosen the cheapest, most inflexible options available, maximizing his benefit while eliminating my ability to recover anything. He had planned this carefully. This was not impulsive or opportunistic. This was calculated. Theft. I called my bank next and spent 45 minutes navigating their phone system before reaching a representative who could help. I explained the situation, choosing my words carefully. I authorized a payment that I now realize was based on fraudulent information. I said the recipient misrepresented what I was paying for. The representative was sympathetic but clear. If you authorize the payment yourself, ma'am, we typically cannot reverse the transaction. However, you can file a dispute claim. We'll investigate and contact the other party. How long does that take? Usually 30 to 45 days. In the meantime, if we find evidence of fraud, we can initiate a chargeback. 30 to 45 days. The trip was in 3 weeks. Even if the bank sided with me, the money would be gone by then, spent on a vacation I would not be taking. But I filed the claim anyway. It felt like the only concrete action I could take, the only way to formally declare that what had happened was wrong. That evening, my father called. I almost did not answer, but some stubborn part of me wanted to hear what he would say. The bank contacted me, he said without preamble. Really, Megan? You're filing fraud claims against your own father. You stole from me. I didn't steal anything. You gave me that money freely. And now you're trying to ruin our vacation because you're having buyer's remorse. That's childish. The gaslighting was so blatant it almost made me laugh. You told me I was paying my share. 1/3. Instead, I paid for everything. Semantics. The point is, the money's spent. The trip is booked. And if you keep pushing this bank thing, all you're going to do is damage our relationship permanently. Is that really what you want? I thought about that question seriously for the first time. What did I want from this relationship? What had it ever given me besides obligation and disappointment? I want my money back, I said quietly. That's not happening. So, you have two choices. Drop this nonsense and come on the trip, or stay home and accept that you made a generous gesture for your family. Either way, move on. He hung up again, leaving me alone with my anger and my emptiness and my remaining 8,000 in savings that suddenly felt like a fortress under siege. I had spent my entire adult life trying to be responsible, trying to be good, trying to be the person who did the right thing even when it was hard. And this was what it had earned me. A father who saw me as an ATM machine, and a stepmother who probably laughed about it behind my back. Something shifted in me that night, sitting in my quiet apartment with the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. I was done being the responsible one. I was done being the easy target. If my father wanted to treat this like a transaction, I would treat it like a transaction, and I would make damn sure I got what I paid for. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I had not felt in days. The anger remained, but it had transformed into something sharper, more focused. I was done being passive. If my father wanted to play games with my money, I would learn the rules and play them better. I started by documenting everything. I went through my text messages and saved screenshots of every conversation with my father about the trip. The initial message about the family meeting, his assurance that everyone would pay their share, his comment about no handouts. Most importantly, his text thanking me for covering us, an admission buried in casual language that he had never intended to pay anything himself. Next, I pulled my bank statements and highlighted the $7,200 transaction. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Cancun Trip and organized everything chronologically. If this became a legal matter, I wanted documentation that would stand up in court. But legal action felt like a nuclear option, something that would permanently destroy whatever remained of my relationship with my father. Part of me still hesitated, still clung to the possibility that this could be resolved without scorched earth tactics. I was naive. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang with a call from Karen. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won out. "Megan, honey, we need to talk," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Your father told me about this little misunderstanding with the payment." "There's no misunderstanding," I said evenly. "He lied to me about what I was paying for." "Oh, sweetie, I think you're being a bit dramatic. Your father would never deliberately deceive you. He loves you. We both do." She paused, and I could practically hear her recalibrating her approach. "Look, I know money is tight for you right now. Maybe we can work something out. How about we pay you back 1,000? That way, you're not out quite so much, and we can all still enjoy the vacation together. 1,000 out of 7,200. I almost laughed at the audacity. "I paid for the entire trip," I said. "I want the entire amount back." "Well, that's just not realistic, is it? The bookings are made. The money is spent. We can't exactly unspend it." Her voice hardened slightly. "You need to be reasonable here. 1,000 is a generous offer. Most people wouldn't offer anything at all. Most people wouldn't steal from their family in the first place. That's a terrible thing to say." She sounded genuinely offended, as if I had committed some breach of etiquette by acknowledging reality. "We're trying to include you in family activities, and this is how you respond with accusations and hostility." "I'm not going on that trip," I said, "and I'm not dropping the dispute with my bank." Karen's tone shifted completely, all pretense of warmth evaporating. "Fine. But don't come crying to us when you're alone and miserable because you chose money over family. Your father has done everything for you, and this is how you repay him. You're ungrateful, Megan. You always have been. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me shaking with anger and something close to relief. The mask had finally dropped. No more pretense of caring, no more fake sweetness. Just the raw contempt that had probably been there all along. I called Sarah immediately and told her about the conversation. $1,000? She repeated incredulously. They steal over $7,000 from you and offer 1,000 back, like they're doing you a favor? She called me ungrateful. Of course she did. These people are textbook manipulators, Megan. They're following the script perfectly. Steal, gaslight, make you feel guilty for being upset, offer an insultingly small concession to make themselves look generous. Sarah paused. You need to accept that you're not getting that money back through negotiation. They have zero incentive to return it. So, what do I do? You make them regret it, she said simply. You find a way to impose consequences that actually matter to them. I thought about that for the rest of the day. What did my father value? What would actually hurt him? Money was the obvious answer, but I had no access to his accounts. No way to recover what he had taken. His reputation mattered to him. He was proud of his image as a successful retiree, a man who had earned his comfortable life. But how could I damage that without looking vindictive? The answer came to me that night as I reviewed the documentation I had compiled. The trip was in 3 weeks. The reservations were non-refundable. My father was counting on all of that. Counting on the sunk costs to keep me quiet, to make me swallow my anger and pretend everything was fine. But what if the trip did not happen? Not for me, for them. I pulled up the resort's website and studied their policies carefully. Non-refundable reservations could still be canceled. You just did not get your money back. But more importantly, the reservation was in my father's name using his credit card information on file. The confirmation emails had gone to his email address, but I had the reservation number. He had forwarded it to me days ago, back when he still needed me to believe we were all going together. I sat with my laptop open, cursor hovering over the resort's customer service contact form. What I was considering was probably illegal, definitely unethical, but was it any worse than what he had done to me? I closed the laptop without submitting anything. I was not ready to cross that line yet. But knowing I could, knowing I had that power, gave me a strange sense of control I had been lacking. Thursday brought a new development. My father called, and this time his voice carried a note of genuine concern. The bank is being persistent about this dispute. He said they want documentation of what the payment was for. I need you to send them a statement saying this was a gift. It was not a gift. Megan, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. If the bank reverses the payment, the resort is going to charge my card, and I don't have that kind of money available right now. The admission surprised me. You don't have $7,000? Not liquid. No, I'm not swimming in cash like you apparently think I am. He sighed heavily. Look, I'm sorry if you felt misled. That wasn't my intention. But what's done is done. Help me out here. Tell the bank it was a gift. And I promise I'll pay you back over time. 100 a month or something. 100 a month would take 6 years to repay. And I knew with absolute certainty that after the first month or two, the payments would stop, and I would be left with nothing but broken promises. No, I said. No, I'm not lying to the bank for you. You can deal with the consequences of your own actions. His voice went cold. You're really going to burn this bridge? You're willing to destroy our relationship over money? You destroyed it, I said quietly. You just expected me not to notice. I hung up before he could respond, my hands trembling, but my resolve solid. Something had shifted irrevocably. I was no longer his compliant daughter, no longer the easy mark he could manipulate with guilt and obligation. Friday afternoon, I received an email from the bank. They had completed their preliminary investigation and determined that while the transaction was authorized, there was evidence of potential misrepresentation. They would be moving forward with a formal chargeback process, which meant my father's credit card would be charged for the disputed amount. I read the email 3 times, a mixture of vindication and anxiety churning in my stomach. This was real now. The bank was taking my side, which meant my father would face real financial consequences. My phone exploded with calls and texts within an hour. My father, Karen, even my Aunt Rachel, my father's sister, who I had not spoken to in over a year. I ignored all of them and went for a long walk around my neighborhood, needing the physical movement to process what was happening. The late afternoon heat pressed down on me, but I barely noticed. My mind was already racing ahead, calculating what my father would do next. When I finally returned home and checked my voicemail, my father's message was predictably furious. "You have crossed a line, Megan. The bank is charging me $7,000 that I don't have. My credit card is going to be maxed out. Do you understand what you've done? You're destroying my credit, my financial stability, all because you couldn't let this go. I hope you're happy. I hope this was worth losing your family over." Karen's message was shorter but more venomous. "Your father is having chest pains because of the stress you're causing. If something happens to him, it's on you. I hope you can live with that." The guilt hit immediately, exactly as they intended. What if my father really was having health problems? What if I was taking this too far? But then I remembered the casual cruelty in his voice when he told me to get over it, the way Karen had called me ungrateful, the calculated manipulation of the entire scheme. I called Sarah, needing someone to talk me down from the guilt spiral. "They're trying to manipulate you again," she said firmly when I explained. "The chest pains, the destroyed credit, all of it. That's just a different tactic. They want you to feel responsible for the consequences of their own actions. But what if something really does happen to him? Then that's on him, not you. He created the situation. He stole from you. The bank agreed with you, Megan. That should tell you everything you need to know about who's in the wrong here." She was right, but guilt was a hard habit to break. I had spent so much of my life trying to be the good daughter, trying to maintain peace, trying to fix problems that were not mine to fix. Saturday morning brought a surprise. My father showed up at my apartment. I saw his car pull into the parking lot from my window and debated not answering the door. But confrontation felt inevitable, and I preferred it on my territory rather than his. He looked haggard when I opened the door, older than I remembered. For a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. Then I remembered why he was here. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside and let him enter. He stood awkwardly in my small living room, taking in the modest furniture and bare walls like he was seeing them for the first time. "You've never really invited me over," he said. "I didn't realize how small this place is." "It's what I can afford," I said evenly. He nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "Look, I came here to apologize. I handled this badly. I should have been clearer about the payment structure. I should have communicated better." It was the closest thing to an admission of guilt I had ever heard from him, but it still fell short. He was apologizing for poor communication, not for theft, for a tactical error, not a moral failing. "You lied to me," I said. "You deliberately set up a situation where I would pay for your vacation while thinking I was paying for mine." "I didn't think of it that way," he protested. "I thought I don't know what I thought. Maybe that you wouldn't mind helping out. You make good money. You don't have kids. No major expenses. It seemed reasonable. It seemed reasonable to steal from me because I don't have children. He flinched at the word steal but did not correct it. The bank is going to charge my card, $7,000. I don't have that money, Megan. My credit card is already carrying a balance. This is going to push me over the limit. I'll have to pay penalty fees, increased interest rates. It's going to spiral. Then you shouldn't have spent money you didn't have on a luxury vacation. I thought it was covered, he said. And there it was, the core of his worldview. He had thought it was covered because he had thought I would simply accept being used. He had banked on my compliance, my guilt, my desperate desire to believe in the possibility of a real family. I want you to understand something, I said, keeping my voice level despite the anger building in my chest. What you did wasn't just about money. You looked at your own daughter and decided I was someone you could manipulate and exploit. You gambled that I would value keeping the peace more than I would value my own financial security and self-respect. And you know what? You almost won. I almost convinced myself to just accept it because fighting back felt too hard, too messy, too much like giving up on the idea of having a real family. We are a real family, he said weakly. No, we're not. Real families don't treat each other like marks in a con. Real families don't steal and then get angry when caught. I moved to the door and opened it. I think you should leave. He stood there for a moment, seeming to wrestle with whether to keep arguing. Finally, he walked to the door, pausing in the threshold. If you go through with this chargeback, I won't be able to afford the trip, he said. Karen and I were really looking forward to it. This was supposed to be special. Then you shouldn't have based it on stolen money, I said, and closed the door in his face. I watched through the window as he walked back to his car, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Some part of me expected to feel triumphant, but I just felt tired. The next week passed in relative quiet. The bank finalized the chargeback, and $7,200 reappeared in my account. I stared at the balance for a long time, feeling something between relief and emptiness. I had won. Technically, I had my money back, but my father's credit card had been charged, and he genuinely did not have the funds to cover it. The resort reservation remained in place, non-refundable, but now impossible for him to actually use. I spent Sunday researching, falling down an internet rabbit hole of travel policies and credit card protection clauses. What I found was enlightening. Many credit cards offered trip cancellation insurance as a benefit, particularly for large purchases. If my father had used the right card and had a valid reason for canceling, he might be able to recover some of the cost. But more interesting was what I learned about resort policies. While the reservation was non-refundable, it could be transferred to another guest with sufficient notice and a modest administrative fee. The resort wanted their rooms filled. They did not particularly care who filled them. An idea began forming, audacious and probably vindictive, but satisfying in a way I had not felt in weeks. Monday morning, I called the resort. I explained that I was one of the guests on a reservation, but that there had been a family emergency and the original party could no longer travel. I asked about the transfer policy. We can transfer the reservation to different guests for a fee of $200, the representative explained. However, the original cardholder would need to authorize the transfer. What if the original cardholder isn't available? Then I'm afraid we couldn't process the transfer without written authorization. I thanked her and hung up, the idea crystallizing further. I could not transfer the reservation myself, but I could make it impossible for my father to use it. That evening, I crafted an email to the resort. I wrote as my father, explaining that due to unforeseen circumstances, he needed to cancel the reservation effective immediately. I apologized for any inconvenience and confirmed that he understood the cancellation was non-refundable. I hovered over the send button for a long time, knowing that clicking it would cross a line I could not uncross. This was fraud, impersonation, possibly several other crimes I did not fully understand. But my father had committed fraud first. He had stolen from me with premeditation and without remorse, and now he was facing consequences he claimed would destroy him financially. Yet he still had not apologized sincerely or offered any real restitution. I clicked send. The confirmation email arrived within minutes. The reservation was canceled. No refund would be issued. The rooms were now available for other guests to book. I felt simultaneously powerful and sick to my stomach. Tuesday morning, I received a frantic call from my father. "What did you do?" he shouted without preamble. "The resort called Karen. They said our reservation was canceled. They said I sent an email canceling it, but I never sent any email." "What the hell did you do?" "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said calmly. "Don't lie to me. This has you written all over it. You canceled our trip out of spite. You got your money back, and that still wasn't enough for you. You had to completely sabotage everything. If someone canceled your reservation, maybe you should take it up with the resort," I suggested. "I'm sure they have records of the communication." They showed me the email. It came from my email address. "How did you access my email, Megan?" "That's illegal. That's hacking." I had not actually accessed his email. I had simply created a free email account with a similar name and sent it from there, counting on the resort staff to not scrutinize the exact address too carefully. But I did not correct his assumption. "I think you're confused," I said. "Maybe Karen canceled it? Or maybe you did and forgot. Either way, this sounds like your problem, not mine." "You are unbelievable," he hissed. "You know what? Fine. You win. Are you happy now? You got your money back. You ruined our vacation and you destroyed our relationship. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." "Actually," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them, "I have one more thing to tell you." "What?" His voice was wary now, uncertain. "I'm done," I said simply. "I'm done being your backup plan. I'm done being the responsible one who fixes your problems. I'm done feeling guilty for having boundaries. You taught me something valuable these past few weeks. That blood relation doesn't obligate me to accept mistreatment. So, thank you for that lesson. It's the most useful thing you've ever given me. Megan." I hung up and immediately blocked his number. Then I blocked Karen. Then I blocked my Aunt Rachel, who had tried calling several more times with increasingly aggressive voicemails about family loyalty. I sat in the silence of my apartment, waiting to feel regret or sadness or something other than this strange light sensation in my chest. It took me a moment to recognize the feeling. Relief. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. Sarah showed up at my apartment after work with takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine. "I figured you might need company," she said, pushing past me into the living room. "And also, I'm dying to know what happened. You've been cryptic as hell in your texts." I told her everything while we ate pad thai straight from the containers. The chargeback, my father's visit, the canceled reservation, the final phone call. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to admiration to something close to awe. "You actually did it," she said when I finished. "You went full scorched earth." "Was it too much?" I asked, voicing the doubt that had been nagging at me. "Are you kidding? It was exactly enough. He stole from you, gaslit you, tried to manipulate you into feeling guilty for being upset, and then got mad when he faced consequences. You didn't do anything to him that he didn't do to himself." She raised her wine glass. "Here's to standing up for yourself and not letting people treat you like a doormat." We clinked glasses and I felt something shift inside me. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I had not gone too far. Maybe I had simply gone far enough. The rest of the week passed quietly. No more calls or texts from my father, though Karen apparently tried reaching me from a different number before I blocked that one too. My Aunt Rachel sent a lengthy email about how disappointed my late mother would be in my behavior, which I deleted without finishing. The following Monday, exactly 3 weeks after that initial family meeting, would have been the day of the trip. I took the day off work and spent it doing absolutely nothing productive. I slept late, watched movies, ordered expensive sushi delivery, and did not think about my father once. It felt like freedom. Tuesday, I returned to work with a clarity I had not felt in months. I threw myself into a new project, a major overhaul of our distribution tracking system that I had been putting off because it felt too ambitious. But ambitious felt right now. Ambitious felt like forward motion. Sarah noticed the change immediately. "You're different," she said during lunch. "More confident or something." "I feel different," I admitted, like I've been carrying around this weight for years without realizing it, and now it's gone. The weight of trying to maintain a relationship that was only ever one-sided. Exactly that. She smiled. "Good for you." Seriously, not enough people have the courage to cut out toxic family members. We're conditioned to believe that blood relation means automatic forgiveness and infinite chances. It's refreshing to see someone actually enforce consequences. Over the next month, I threw myself into work and into rebuilding my life on my own terms. I started taking a pottery class on Thursday evenings, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. I went out with colleagues for happy hour instead of rushing home to an empty apartment. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious materialized. Most importantly, I started therapy. Not because I thought something was wrong with me, but because I wanted to understand why I had let my father manipulate me for so long. My therapist helped me see patterns I had been blind to. The way I had always prioritized other people's comfort over my own needs. The way I had equated being useful with being valued. The way I had convinced myself that setting boundaries was selfish. "You were trained from a young age to be accommodating," she explained during one session, "and your father exploited that training. But here's what's important. You recognized it and you stopped it. That takes real strength." 2 months after the canceled trip, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, an actual physical letter addressed in my father's handwriting. I stared at the envelope for several minutes before opening it, debating whether I even wanted to know what it said. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper covered in my father's familiar scroll. "Megan, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to understand what's happened since you decided to punish me. The chargeback destroyed my credit score. I had to close that credit card, and now I can't get approved for a new one. Karen is furious with me. She says I humiliated her by promising a vacation we couldn't take. She's talking about leaving. My friends keep asking why we didn't go on the trip. And I have to lie and say it was a scheduling conflict because I'm too embarrassed to tell them the truth. You did this. You chose revenge over family. And now I'm paying the price every single day. I hope you're satisfied. I hope destroying your father's life was worth whatever point you were trying to make. I raised you better than this." I read the letter twice, waiting for the guilt to hit. It did not come. Instead, I felt a strange detachment, like I was reading about someone else's father, someone else's family drama. The phrase, "I raised you better than this," particularly struck me. He had raised me to be compliant, to prioritize his needs, to feel responsible for his emotions. And I had been better than that. I had been better than the role he had assigned me. I took a picture of the letter, filed it away with my other documentation, and threw the original in the recycling bin. Then I texted my therapist to schedule an extra session that week. "He's still trying to manipulate you," my therapist said when I showed her the letter during our appointment. "Notice how there's no actual apology, no acknowledgement of what he did wrong. It's all about his suffering and your responsibility for that suffering." "I know," I said, "but part of me still wonders if I went too far. If canceling the reservation was crossing a line. Did he cross a line when he stole $7,000 from you?" "Yes." "Did he cross a line when he tried to make you feel guilty for being upset about it?" "Yes." "Then why are you holding yourself to a different standard than you hold him?" She leaned forward slightly. "Here's what I want you to consider. You didn't cancel that reservation to hurt him. You canceled it because he had already gotten your money through the chargeback, but he was still planning to benefit from the crime he committed. You were evening the scales, making sure he didn't profit from stealing from you. That's not revenge. That's justice." Her words settled something in me that had been restless since I clicked send on that email. Justice. Not revenge, not cruelty, but a simple refusal to let him benefit from hurting me. 3 months in, my father made one more attempt at contact. He showed up at my workplace during lunch hour, waiting in the parking lot until he saw me walking to my car. "Megan, please," he said, approaching quickly before I could retreat inside. "We need to talk." "No, we don't," I said, unlocking my car. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I looked at him properly for the first time in months. He looked older, more worn. His clothes hung a little looser. His face was drawn, but his eyes held the same calculating expression I had come to recognize, the one that appeared when he wanted something. "You have 2 minutes," I said, not getting in the car, but not moving away from it either. "I need a loan," he said bluntly. $5,000. Karen did leave me. She took half of our savings when she went. I'm behind on the mortgage, behind on bills. I'm drowning, Megan. And you're my daughter. You're supposed to help family." The audacity was breathtaking. After everything, after the theft, the manipulation, the guilt trips, the accusatory letter, he was asking me for money. "No," I said simply. "I'll pay you back. I promise. With interest. Whatever you want." "No, Megan, please. I'm desperate here. I might lose the house. Don't you care about that? That's your childhood home. A house you inherited free and clear." I pointed out. "It's because of your own financial decisions, not because of anything I did or didn't do." "This is your fault," he said, anger creeping into his voice. "If you hadn't pushed that chargeback, if you hadn't canceled the trip, none of this would have happened. Karen would still be here. My credit would be fine. I would be fine. You destroyed my life because you couldn't let go of a grudge. I enforced consequences. I corrected. There's a difference. And I'm not giving you money. Not 5,000, not 500, not 5. You have 2 choices. You can accept that our relationship is over and leave me alone, or you can keep showing up and harassing me until I file a restraining order. Those are your options." His face flushed red. "You're just like your mother. Cold, unforgiving." She could hold a grudge forever, too. The mention of my mother, who had been warm and generous to a fault, who had tolerated my father's selfishness until cancer took her, made something snap inside me. "Do not talk about her," I said, my voice dropping to something dangerous. "You don't get to use her memory as a weapon against me. She would be ashamed of what you've become. Actually, she probably always knew what you were. She just loved you anyway. I don't have to." I got in my car and locked the doors. My father stood in the parking lot staring at me through the window with an expression I could not quite read. Hurt maybe, or anger, or just the realization that his leverage was gone, that I was no longer someone he could use. I drove away without looking back. That night, I called Sarah and told her about the encounter. "He asked you for money," she said incredulously. "After everything, 5,000 to save the house he's losing because he's financially irresponsible. Please tell me you said no." I said no, and I told him we're done. Completely done. I think he finally believes it. "Good," Sarah said firmly. "You know what? We should celebrate. Not the fact that your dad is struggling. That's just sad. But the fact that you held your ground, you didn't let him guilt you or manipulate you. That's huge growth, Megan. It doesn't feel like something to celebrate," I admitted. "It just feels like something that had to be done. That's exactly why it should be celebrated. You did a hard thing because it was right, not because it felt good. That's real strength." 4 months after the initial theft, I received an unexpected email from Karen. The subject line read, "You should know the truth." I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won out. "Megan, I'm writing this because I think you deserve to know what really happened with that vacation. Your father told me the whole trip was paid for. He said he had saved up money specifically for it. He said we were all contributing equally. I didn't know he had taken the money from you until after the chargeback happened, and he finally admitted what he'd done." I was furious. I told him he needed to make it right, to pay you back, to apologize properly. He refused. He said you would get over it eventually, that you always did. That's when I realized I didn't know the man I married. I left him, not because of the money or the canceled trip, but because I saw who he really was underneath. Someone who could steal from his own daughter and feel justified doing it. Someone who could lie to his wife and not feel guilty about it. I'm not asking for forgiveness or trying to excuse my part in this. I should have questioned things more. Should have insisted on seeing receipts. I just wanted you to know that I didn't know. And I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing standing up to him. I wish I had been strong enough to do it sooner." I read the email 3 times, processing this new information. Karen had not been part of the original scheme. She had been another victim of my father's manipulation, or at least another person caught in his web of lies. Part of me wanted to respond to acknowledge her apology, and maybe even develop some kind of understanding with her. But a larger part recognized that Karen was still part of a chapter I had closed. Opening communication would just complicate the clean break I had worked so hard to achieve. I moved the email to a folder labeled Closure and left it unanswered. Work continued to be a source of satisfaction and growth. The distribution tracking system I had overhauled was performing beyond expectations, and my supervisor called me into her office one afternoon with news. "Corporate has noticed your work on the tracking project," she said, smiling. "They want to implement it across all our regional facilities, and they want you to lead the rollout." Seriously? I felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with anyone else's validation. This was mine. I had earned it. Seriously. It comes with a promotion to Senior Logistics Coordinator and a 20% salary increase. You'd be traveling more, working with teams across the country. I know that's a big change, but I think you're ready for it. I accepted immediately. The promotion felt like confirmation that I had been right to prioritize myself, to invest in my own growth rather than constantly managing my father's crisis. That evening, I called Sarah to share the news. "That's incredible," she said. "See, this is what happens when you stop letting toxic people drain your energy. You have room to actually succeed." She was right. For years, I had been operating at half capacity, always distracted by the next family emergency, always holding back resources in case my father needed something. Without that constant drain, I had flourished. 5 months in, I found out through a mutual acquaintance that my father had sold the house, not to foreclosure, but a regular sale. He had moved into a small apartment across town and taken a part-time job at a hardware store. The information should have made me feel something: sympathy, satisfaction, vindication. But I felt nothing. He was simply someone who used to be part of my life and no longer was. My pottery class had evolved into a genuine hobby. I was terrible at it, producing lopsided bowls and uneven vases, but I loved it anyway. There was something meditative about working with clay, about creating something with my hands that had no practical purpose beyond existing. One Thursday evening, while I was struggling with a particularly stubborn piece that refused to center on the wheel, the instructor came over to help. "You're fighting it," she said gently. "Stop trying to force it into shape. Work with the clay, not against it." Her words resonated beyond pottery. I had spent so much of my life fighting against reality, trying to force my father into being someone he was not, trying to shape our relationship into something it could never be. Working with the clay meant accepting its properties, its limitations, its nature. Maybe that was what I had finally learned to do with my father. I had stopped fighting to make him someone he was not, and simply accepted what he had shown me: that he was selfish, manipulative, and incapable of putting my well-being above his own desires. And in accepting that, I had freed myself from the exhausting work of trying to change him. 6 months after everything started, I was sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Megan, it's Aunt Rachel." I had forgotten that I had blocked her. Apparently, she was calling from a different line. "What do you want?" I asked, ready to hang up immediately. "I wanted to apologize," she said quickly, as if afraid I would disconnect before she finished. "I've been talking to Karen. She told me what really happened with that vacation. I had only heard your father's version, and I believed him. I said terrible things to you, and I'm sorry. You were right to do what you did. He's my brother, and I love him. But he was wrong. You didn't deserve to be treated that way." The apology caught me off guard. Of all the people in my father's orbit, Aunt Rachel had been the most vocally critical of my actions. Hearing her acknowledge that I had been right felt surreal. "Thank you for saying that," I said carefully. "I appreciate the apology. Do you think—" she hesitated. "Do you think we could have coffee sometime? I'd like to have a relationship with you that's separate from your father. You're my niece. I don't want to lose you because of his mistakes." I thought about it. Aunt Rachel had been manipulated too, fed a distorted version of events designed to make me look vindictive and cruel. She had believed her brother because why would he lie? But when presented with the truth, she had been willing to admit she was wrong. "Maybe," I said. "Let me think about it." "That's fair," she said. "Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that I'm here if you ever want to talk." After we hung up, I sat with the possibility of rebuilding that relationship. It felt different from the dynamic with my father. Aunt Rachel had hurt me, but she had not betrayed me. She had been wrong, but she had apologized sincerely. Maybe there was room for forgiveness there, but I did not need to decide right away. That was one of the gifts I had given myself through this whole experience: permission to take my time, to prioritize my own readiness over other people's timelines. 7 months after the theft, I took my first real vacation. Not a family obligation, not a guilt-driven commitment, but a trip I planned entirely for myself. I flew to Portland for a long weekend, stayed in a small boutique hotel, ate at restaurants I chose, and spent hours wandering through Powell's books and the surrounding neighborhoods. On the last day of the trip, I found myself sitting on a bench overlooking the Willamette River, watching boats drift by. My phone buzzed with a work email, but I ignored it. For the first time in my adult life, I was fully present in a moment without thinking about what I should be doing instead, who I should be helping, what crisis might be waiting for me at home. I thought about my father briefly and without pain. I wondered if he was okay, if he was managing his finances better, if he had learned anything from losing Karen and nearly losing his house. But the wondering was abstract, the way you might wonder about a stranger's life after a brief encounter. He was not my responsibility anymore. He never really had been, but I had believed he was for so long that it felt like truth. Letting go of that false responsibility had been the hardest and most necessary thing I had ever done. When I returned to Phoenix, I had coffee with Aunt Rachel. We met at a small cafe near my apartment, neutral territory with an easy exit if things went badly, but they did not. We talked for 2 hours, carefully at first, and then with increasing honesty. She told me about her own complicated relationship with my father, the ways he had borrowed money from her over the years and rarely paid it back, the promises he made and broke. I enabled him too, she admitted. I told myself I was helping family, but really I was just making it easier for him to avoid taking responsibility. When you stood up to him, it forced me to look at my own patterns. I've been in therapy for a few months now, working through it. Therapy has been really helpful for me too, I said, feeling a connection form between us. It's hard work, but it's worth it. We agreed to stay in touch, to build something new that was not defined by my father or his dysfunction. It felt like reclaiming a piece of family that I had lost, not because it was gone, but because I had not known it could exist separately. 8 months in, I was promoted again, this time to regional logistics manager. The position came with an office, a substantial raise, and the respect of colleagues who valued my expertise. I celebrated by taking myself to an expensive steakhouse and ordering the most extravagant meal on the menu. No one to split the bill with. No one to feel guilty about outspending, just me, acknowledging my own success in a way I would never have done before. My father tried to contact me one more time 9 months after the original theft. He sent a letter to my workplace, presumably because he did not have my new address after I moved to a better apartment in a nicer neighborhood. Megan, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just want you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did was wrong. I understand why you did what you did. I understand that I destroyed our relationship through my own selfishness. I'm working with a financial counselor now, trying to get my life together. I'm not asking you to forgive me or to let me back into your life. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better, that you were right to hold me accountable. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for being the kind of father who made you feel like you had to choose between self-respect and family. You deserved better. You always deserved better. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're happy. You don't need to respond to this. I just needed to say it. I read the letter in my car during lunch break, sitting in my designated parking spot with my new title on the sign. The apology felt real this time, unencumbered by justifications or requests, but it also felt like it came too late after I had already done the work of moving on without it. I took a picture of the letter, filed it away with the others, and threw the original in a public trash can on my way back into the office. Maybe someday I would be ready to have some kind of relationship with my father again, but today was not that day, and tomorrow probably would not be either. And that was okay. I had built a life I was proud of. I had friends who valued me, work that challenged me, hobbies that fulfilled me. I had learned to recognize manipulation and to walk away from it without guilt. I had learned that setting boundaries was not selfish, that protecting myself was not cruel, that choosing my own well-being over someone else's comfort was not only acceptable, but necessary. My father had taught me one final valuable lesson, though not the one he intended. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop loving people who hurt you. not with anger or bitterness, but with the simple recognition that you deserve better than what they are capable of giving. That evening, I went to my pottery class and successfully centered a piece of clay for the first time. It was not perfect. It wobbled slightly and the walls were uneven, but it held. It maintained its shape. It became something functional and real, much like me. In the months that followed, my father's life unraveled in ways that had nothing to do with me, but everything to do with the patterns I had finally stopped enabling. His part-time job at the hardware store ended when he was caught falsifying his time card, claiming hours he had not worked. The apartment he rented raised their rates, and he struggled to pay the increase on his reduced income. His credit remained damaged, making it nearly impossible to secure loans or new credit cards. Friends who had once admired his early retirement began to distance themselves as the reality of his financial situation became apparent. He tried to reconnect with Karen, who blocked his calls and made it clear she had moved on with her life. The small social circle he had built in retirement gradually shrank as people tired of his constant complaints and requests for financial help. He became, in essence, what he had always feared: alone and struggling with no one willing to bail him out because he had exhausted everyone's goodwill through years of manipulation and broken promises. I built a life filled with people who celebrated my successes without trying to diminish them, who supported me without expecting payment for that support, who understood that real love did not come with strings attached. I learned that revenge was not about destroying someone else, but about refusing to be destroyed yourself. And sometimes the sweetest revenge was simply living well and leaving the people who hurt you to face the consequences of their own actions without your intervention, without your rescue, without your continued participation in their dysfunction.